Hello, everyone, and welcome to the League One Lowdown podcast. We're here another week, another sweltering hot week here in England, and another week for our League One transfer updates. You'll notice if you're on YouTube that I'm flying solo for this one. Seb Jones was meant to be with me, but unfortunately, technical demons and internet troubles have kept him away. So you've got to deal with just myself for this update. So I'm not going to waste any time rambling on. And instead, we're going to jump straight into going through all of the teams, obviously starting with AFC Wimbledon. If we have missed any off our document that we're showing on YouTube, do let us know in the comments, and we'll be sure to add those in next week for another transfer update. We're less than a month away from the season beginning now, so business really starting to hot up. Not every team we've got stuff to talk about, but for the vast majority, I'd say, there are business over the past week to discuss, and that starts with Wimbledon and starts with a free transfer from Fulham. This one is an unbelievable piece of business based purely off the name of Wimbledon's new man, Delaney McCoy Splat, perhaps the best name in football, and he comes in, the 20-year-old midfielder. His first move into senior football. That makes it a little bit risky for my money, in that he hasn't played senior football, EFL football before, and he comes in on a permanent deal. I think it's a different kettle of fish if you're bringing in an inexperienced youth player for a season-long loan, and if it doesn't work, you send him back at the end of it. But in this case, with Wimbledon, they have him for 2 years. I think it is the deal, and that makes it a little bit risky. In that if it doesn't work, they're sort of stuck with him for another season. So we'll see on that one. An interesting move nonetheless, and a very exciting and funny name. Delaney, for that. Barnsley are next. This is why we are really gutted that Seb isn't with us, because David McGoldrick has joined Barnsley on a free transfer. He turned down a contract offer from Notts County to move elsewhere, and he has moved to Oakwell, up into League One once again. 30 goals he scored in his past 2 seasons at League Two level with County, and he reunites with Conor Orahan. To echo what Seb was saying in our failed recording of the podcast, not to pull back the curtain too far, but he said that it would be a very good deal if it was 5 years ago, to sort of paraphrase him, because perhaps you wouldn't have the same disgruntlement you have now in terms of his age. He's 37, and in terms of his injury record, he's had times on the injury shelf over the past few months, and I think he picked up an injury in the second leg of the playoff semi-final against Wimbledon, who obviously won in the end. So there are those concerns lingering in the background, but he's a goal scorer, and that is what you need, especially in League One, especially in football, in the EFL. You need a goal scorer, and David McGoldrick is definitely that. So in my book, it's a good signing. Another good signing comes at Blackpool. They've brought in from Leyton Orient Jordan Brown, 460,000 the reported fee there, 4-year deal, an extra 12 months option as well. 153 appearances he's made at Leyton Orient, and it's another dint in that team that reached the playoff final for Richie Wellens. But for Blackpool, it's another great piece of business. He's done really well at League One level over the last few seasons, and adds that extra bit of quality to the Steve Bruce's team, which have had an overhaul, and a very good overhaul this summer already. George Honeyman coming in from Millwall is a great signing. Ravioli coming from Wickham, the goalkeeper, great signing. Ennis on a undisclosed fee from Stoke brings him back after his incredible loan spell. And in the centre of defence, Horsfall and Ikwekwe, great pieces of business as well. So everything's looking good for Blackpool at present, and Jordan Brown is the latest mark in that column. As for Bolton, a little bit different business, you would say, bringing in from Rapid Vienna Thierry Gale on an undisclosed fee. He's a forward, Barbados international. This will be his first taste of EFL football. And then on a loan from Brighton and Hove Albion, the winger Amore Koze Deberry. Hopefully I've not butchered his name too much. Not someone I'll admit that I know anything about, but two moves on different ends of the spectrum, bringing in a player who is from a Premier League academy. You never know quite how those are going to go, but Teddy Sharman-Lowe, they brought in from Chelsea, proved himself last year at Doncaster, so you hope he sort of follows that mould of having a really good loan spell in the EFL. As for Gale coming in from Rapid Vienna, He's unproven in England, and that obviously is a factor. But how much of a factor it is perhaps overplayed, because football is the same game no matter where you play it. So it'd be interesting to see how he gets on. And they're casting their net a little bit wider in that sort of Wickham mould that they have been employing over recent transfer windows of dipping into foreign markets and bringing in players who otherwise wouldn't be captured by sort of regular and more conventional scouting methods. As for Bradford, nothing for them. Burton, they bring in a new player in Toby Sibic, coming in on undisclosed fee, former Barnsley man, the defender. Tall, physical presence, could be a decent signing. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, he's played at League One level over recent seasons, so that's never a bad thing in terms of a new player coming in. Cardiff continued their very strange summer. No ins as of yet. New manager, of course, in Brian Barry Murphy, and a lot of high-profile exits as well. Anwar, I beg your pardon, El Ghazi, Aaron Collins, Aaron Ramsey, I beg your pardon. Both ex-Premier League players, and Ramsey, obviously, we all know, former Arsenal. They're losing those high-profile players, as you would expect, dropping down into League One. How they replace them and how Brian Barry Murphy replaces them as the new head coach will be interesting to see, and they need to get a move on as we're less than a month away from the season starting. A team who definitely has got a move on is Doncaster. 7 or 8 signings already in for them, nothing over the past 7 days, but Damola Ajayi and Brandon Hanlan both scored in their pre-season debuts for the club. The focus now for Doncaster is out. Kyle Hurst could be on his way, both on a permanent or the loan, and a few young loanees have already headed out the football club as attention turns to that side of business after Grant McCann got a lot of the ins done very early on. Exeter City, you'll notice on our screen if you're on YouTube that there's no ins flagged for them, but Joe Whitworth has re-signed on his season-long loan from Crystal Palace just before we hit record. So that is obviously a superb piece of business. We all know how well he did at Exeter last season, the FA Cup run. He was a star of that as well. So always good to bring those loan players back in. Huddersfield, Jack Watmore coming in from Preston, undisclosed fee for the defender. The interesting thing for him is that he's a League One winner with Wigan, and having that pedigree, having that been there and done it in terms of winning the division and securing promotion out of it is a massive bonus for a Huddersfield side who are obviously themselves looking to get promoted. Leyton Orient have been quite busy as well over the past week or so. Michael Craig coming in from Reading, Idris El Manouzi in from Oxford United, and the one I wanted to really focus on was Aaron Connolly coming in from Millwall, free transfer. He was at Brighton. We've mentioned a couple of Brighton players already in terms of the loanees. He coming in on a permanent deal is a superb piece of business for Leyton Orient. He replaces Charlie Callum, which was never going to be an easy thing to do after the absolute buckets of goals he scored last season. He's got 12 goals in his past 25 championship starts, though that is spaced out over the last 16 months. He's got Premier League pedigree, of course, as I mentioned, from the academy at Brighton. So for me, that's got it's constant. It's just tick after tick after tick in terms of that being a good piece of business, and being able to replace Charlie Kelman as I think successful as it will turn out to be is fantastic, and they're doing very smart work in the transfer window so far. Lincoln have had work to do after losing Sean Rowan and Paudie O'Connor, two of their two main defenders, of course, including captain Paudie O'Connor. Sonny Bradley has come in already from Derby, helps ease that a little bit, and Riley Towler has come in as well. I think it's an undisclosed fee. It does say free transfer on the screen, though I think there is a fee involved there. Do correct me if I'm wrong on that, but he's another good option in terms of that defence for Lincoln. They perhaps need another left back just to really solidify the defence after Rowan and O'Connor left. But Towler and Bradley are a superb start and a very different type of signing for Lincoln. Callum Davis talks a lot, and I do it as well, in terms of the model at Lincoln City. The two signings that definitely go away from that but I'm sure they will be successful ones, both good players at League One level. Luton have been busy. Not everything is on that screen. Jake Richards coming in, Hakeem Adoffin as well, and to add to that, Naki Wells on a 5.5 year uh, stint he had at Bristol City. He comes in, dropping down into League One, and Nigel Longquick as well, joining the club, Dutch centre half, coming in from Wolves. So varied business, I think you would call it, for Luton, and we'll see how it goes in terms of the success of that. But they've had some work to do after losing quite a lot of players. After dropping down successive relegations, they're bringing in some players who can help push them, I'm sure they believe, back into the Championship. Necky Wells obviously stands out. No need for an introduction there. Mansfield haven't done anything over the last 7 days, though they've been busy, as I mentioned, throughout the window. Northampton Town we can add into that category as well. Plenty of signings for them, though none fall into this last 7-day window. There are a few clubs who fall into that category that we'll rattle through before we get to some more business later on through our alphabetical list. Peterborough and Plymouth, no ins there. Port Vale are exactly the same. Reading, though, have done a bit of business and done actually quite a bit of business over the past 7 days. Mark Mahoney coming in on loan from Brighton. The striker was sought by seemingly a big number of League One clubs. Reading is where he ends up. Matty Jacobs, left back, 24-year-old, coming in from Hull on loan. Really struggled for game time at the Tigers, 22 appearances since 2019. He finds a home on loan for the next season. And Finlay Burns coming in, centre half, 22 from Manchester City. Swansea, Hull and Stevenage are the teams who have been on his resume after coming through the Manchester City youth ranks. What you will notice from those three loan signings, they follow obviously the three signings of Paudie O'Connor and Jack Stevens from Lincoln and Cambridge United respectively, is that they're doing business on the cheap, and that is obviously working within their limitations but doing so really well. And they're bringing in some great players. Mark Mahoney was sought, as I said, by a lot of clubs in the division, and to win a race like that against your rivals in a league is always a positive sign that you're doing things right in the transfer market. So all positive signs for Reading so far for them. And as I mentioned, Jacobs and Burns, a couple of more loanees that look like good signings. Rotherham are away in Spain, I believe. They're still on their summer camp. A lot of these teams are either away on the continent, having a bit of warm weather training, or they're already starting their pre-season, their games. So we're sort of hitting that period where business slows down a little bit, you would expect, because the focus turns to who you have got in terms of building towards the start of the season, which is, as I mentioned right at the very start, less than a month away. Stevenage have no news to report over the past 7 days, as do Stockport, who have been busy in short bursts. Malik Mothersill coming in from Peterborough, a huge signing. Teo Edun and Joseph Olowu coming in before him on 3 deals. So they brought in already 3 superb signings and replacing those players that are moving on with extra quality. They're making that team better with the signings they are making, which is all you need to do when you're finished up the top end of the table in a playoff spot. If you can add little bits of quality and replace leaving players with ones who are slightly better, then you're in the box seat for a push again for promotion. Wigan have brought in Callum Wright on loan from Plymouth. Interesting to see a player moving from one League One club to another on a loan basis. The 25-year-old centre mid came through the Leicester ranks and has spent time at Cheltenham on loan and at Blackpool. So he has that. He's been around a bit, so if you like, and he's 25. He's got a bit of experience, but he's not overly experienced, touching towards the twilight of his career. He's in that nice, moving towards his peak years. And a loan spell for him at Wigan, you would assume, is to get him game time from a Plymouth perspective. And obviously it boosts Wigan's squad, though their main focus has been at the very top of the pitch. Paul Mullin coming in from Wrexham, the perfect example of that, and Christian Sadie as well from Portsmouth, as they look to strengthen that attack that was the issue for them last season, because they were so good defensively, but just didn't score goals. And that brings us finally to Wycombe, who have gone about their business in an interesting way, bringing in players from places you wouldn't expect in terms of Feyenoord and FC Basel as well. It's been a quiet week for them, though, over the past 7 days. So thank you for joining me here on the League One Lowdown. Unfortunately, for all involved, I think really that it's just myself and not Seb as well. So a little bit of a snappier, shorter transfer update. So I hope you have enjoyed it. Do follow along if you're on podcast platforms, subscribe if you're on YouTube, and you'll be able to access next week's transfer updates and all the weeks that follow as we head into the season as well. Our big pre-season preview is on its way as we get closer to the start of the season. That'll come obviously at the end of the month. So lots to come over the next few weeks. So stay tuned and subscribe to make sure you don't miss a single episode of the League One Lowdown. Thank you for joining me here for another transfer update, and we'll see you again next week here on the podcast.